Hello, my friends. Today we are talking about the fall of Rome. Our objective is what students can describe at least 4 factors that lead to the fall of Rome and how Rome looks after its fall. How? By watching this video, and then you're going to complete a simulation. Why? In order to build an understanding of what the world looks like at the beginning of 7th grade social studies. Okay, so it is important to note that when we talk about the fall of Rome, we are not talking about one moment in time. This is going to happen for hundreds of years. So starting around the year 175-ish to about 3, 4, it really just depends on, 455 is the big final sacking. But this is not just one thing. There are many reasons why Rome falls, and we're going to look at specifically 8 at the end. But for now, just know that there are multiple reasons. So let's start with the first one, leaders' impact. So in 117 CE, Rome is at its largest size. And from 100 to 150 CE, Rome is at its height under what's called the 5 good emperors. So this literally means 5 good emperors, and these people are leaders who are chosen by the Senate and who are good at leading. They're not just born into being leaders. Now, the last of those 5 leaders, Marcus Aurelius, is going to die, and instead of electing somebody who belongs in the position, he's going to say that his son, Commodus, should take the spot. Now, when we talk about Commodus is a bad leader. Homie literally thought he was Hercules. He is crazy. He basically just is selfish and cares more about gladiator fights than he does his empire. There's also a ton of other bad leaders, corrupt leaders, and government instability just in general right after Commodus dies. There's going to be several 14-year-olds that run Rome with their grandmothers and mothers guiding them, but still they're ruling the empire as a 14-year-old, which is going to be very difficult for people to handle. So that's the setting we're in as we go into the decline. There's just bad leaders one after the other and lots of fighting. Now, there will be good times when there are good leaders, but for the majority of this time period, there's really just bad leadership. There's also massive problems at home. One of the biggest things that's going to start the decline of Rome is this thing called the Antonine Plague. And this plague is just going to kill lots and lots of people in Rome, which starts off this downfall. Another thing that we've seen in the past, but is really just going to keep making it worse and worse, is there's no work for the poor. And this is largely based on a reliance of free labor from enslaved people. So these people who are enslaved give no incentive to, well, they don't get paid, but there's no incentive for the poor to get paid because there are the bread and circuses mentality. So like we saw with the daily life lesson, emperors are just going to feed and entertain the poor in order to keep them from revolting. But this means that there's no work to be done for them. There's also this silver inflation. So not only are there poor people not without jobs, now the silver is going to be worth less. And what that means is emperors were slowly taking out silver from the actual coin itself, which is the only reason the coin had value. Now, the merchants noticed this, and prices skyrocket in order to match the same value that they were getting before. So if something was worth 50 coins before, now under this new emperor who only has 50% of the silver in his coins, I'm going to charge 100 coins instead of my 50 because I still want the same amount of silver. Because prices are skyrocketing, people are not going to be able to afford things, and then there's more poor people, and the cycle continues. There's also going to be a major religious change in this time. Before, when we talked about religion in the daily life lesson, we talked about how um, they believe in multiple gods. And one thing that's going to really change is the rise of Christianity. Now, Christians believe in one God, and this is going to change the central values of Rome, even straight down to the gladiator fights. After the Edict of Milan, which makes Christianity legal, um, you're going to see a shift being like gladiator fights are too brutal for us Christians, so we should not have them anymore. And then they're going to stop the brutal gladiator fights the way that they were. And that's one of the ways the emperors are keeping the poor in check. So there's just all this turmoil and change within the home as itself. But then enter threats. Outside, there are multiple barbarian groups attacking Rome at the borders. Now, barbarians, as a reminder, means non-Romans, just like with the Greeks. So these groups could be the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Franks. There's just a whole bunch of little barbarian groups. Now, when I say little, I don't mean like 10 or 15 people. I mean not as big as Rome, attacking the border. And toward the end, the Huns, which are all the way in Mongolia which is where China is, or close to China, are going to start to move west and force the other barbarian groups to push those Roman borders even more. And also on the eastern side, the Persians are going to attempt to regain the land that the Romans currently hold. And Rome sees the Persians as much bigger threat than the East, which is going to start to leave, than the West, which is going to start to leave the West weaker and weaker. Along with that, there's going to be problems within the military itself. Emperors are going to be threatened by military leaders and fear that they're going to either assassinate them or take over power because of the instability and the corruption. Also, expansion and defense of this huge empire is going to take lots and lots of manpower, which means that they're going to try to recruit the poor in order to make the army larger, but this isn't going to work. And so they're going to recruit barbarians, which are not loyal to Rome, to fight for Rome, which is going to make a struggle in the military itself. And it's very, very expensive to keep and maintain this army. As well as because of Rome's size, there's lots of communication difficulties. When it's this big, you're not going to be able to send somebody a message in like 30 minutes. It's going to take 30 days. So one of the solutions for this was to split it into two. Because they're going to have now two emperors. Now, there's many cases of two emperors. And they've also had other cities used as the legal headquarters. And I say legal headquarters because it's not really the capital prior to this. It's more just, in general, people don't want to be in Rome because then they might be attacked. Oops. I will continue in a second. And Rome is going to, in general, need more care than what they have before. So one of the things they do is divide it into two. So in 284, Diocletian, which is one of the Roman emperors that is actually pretty good at his job, is going to establish the two sides in order to manage it a little bit better. And at some point, they're going to have four leaders, so two in the east and two in the west. Now, this is going to help maintain some more control and get some political stability, but this is not going to make it able to reunite. So in 395, there's going to be two sons that take over after their emperor father, and they're going to make the split stick. Okay, so we have Eastern and Western Rome now. So the eastern part of Rome covers like the area where the Greeks took over from the Persians, like a little bit of the part right north of Greece, and I think Greece itself. And then the western half covers everything from that point over to the Atlantic Ocean. And when we talk about the east versus the west, the eastern part of Rome, even though it's the newer part of Rome, quote unquote, is actually much more well established than the west because they're building on much, much, much older cities. They're not building up from the roots of newer cities. These cities have been in place for thousands of years at this point in time because that's where the Greeks and the Persians ruled. And then this move, the shift towards the left being much better, the eastern part being much better, is going to leave Rome more vulnerable. So that means that it's going to be weaker and that the barbarians are going to focus their attacks on Rome itself. And while they weren't enemies, they did work together in some degree. They weren't always the best at aiding one another. So if Eastern Rome was doing fine, it's not necessarily going to go help Western Rome with their attacks. Now, the final straw is going to be an attack on Rome in 455. Now, the empire has weakened and weakened and weakened at this time, but in 455, the western half is going to fall. Now, when we talk about the fall of Rome, I don't know that the fall is the right term because the eastern half of Rome is going to continue for another 1,000+ years and then will become the Byzantine Empire later on and is going to continue the Ottoman Empire, and will continue all the way up until World War I, which is a really, really long time. So even though half of it falls, it's not really completely gone from the world history standpoint. Okay, so for your unlocked notes, there is a list of all the things that we saw as impacts. So we have invasions by the barbarians, economic troubles, an over-reliance on slave labor, rise of Eastern Rome, overexpansion and military overspending, government contribution and political instability, arrival of the Huns, migration of the barbarian tribes, rise of Christianity and the loss of traditional values, weakening of the Roman legions with barbarian soldiers. So that's the whole note sheet. However, all of this comes from this article, which is from history.com, and has much more detail than just the list if you need it for your practice or if you need it for your mastery check. With your practice, you will be completing a Google Form simulation of decisions the emperor had to make. As you complete this, there are parts where you have to rely on the emperor you chose. However, for the most part, you have to figure out the best way for Rome to continue or to not get weaker. If you succeed in prolonging Rome's life, then you will get a 10 out of 10. And if you don't, then it will go down steadily until you only get a 7 out of 10. So the lowest you can get is a 7 out of 10 on the simulation. Please have fun doing it, and hopefully you can save Rome. Have a great day.